I would like to thank everyone that participating for another webinar. I think it's the last one in October, Vasquia. I'm not remember, but anyway, Vasquia or Valentina, they are going to inform you at the end of the webinar. Please accept my pleasure to introduce. It's my honor to introduce Ms. Thuha Nguyen. I know Thuha from the first year that I joined FAU. She was really supportive to all the FAU research/educational activities. She was mentor to many of our graduate students. She has been many times as a consultant on different company, plus now in her company on campus. I'm looking forward to see her on campus again, and probably we are going to invite her again in spring. She's very involved with the women transportation seminar. Is very involved with other professional activities. She's one of the leaders in Florida. So with almost 20 years of experience, Ms. Thuha Nguyen has participated in a variety of transportation engineering and planning projects that span transportation planning, traffic operations, safety analysis, travel demand modeling, multimodal planning, and research. With a strong commitment to quality work, professional development, and client service. It's my, as I told you, my utmost pleasure to introduce Thuha. And please send the questions to Valentina through the chat. So Valentina is going to moderate the Q&A session after Thuha's presentation. I'm very excited to hear again because she's extremely great speaker. Thuha, the floor is yours. Thank you. Also, I'm sorry, I would like to thank Valentina that they put this, webinar together. This webinar is in collaboration with FAU WTS Student Chapter. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And in fact, I should also say good morning to a few of you. I noticed that there's about 30 of us on the call right now, and we probably expect another 10, 15 joining us. And just looking through the participant list, I saw that we have folks from really all over the country. So we welcome you. Thank you for joining us. As Dr. Kreiser was so lovely and kindly spoke. My name is Thuha Nguyen. I am with VIA Planning, and it is truly my pleasure to speak with you today. You will notice that I get really excited about the topics. I love my work. I love helping students. I love getting to know you guys. So when I get super excited, I tend to talk really fast, and then my accent just came right out. So forgive me if you need to just raise your hand or send us a note just so that I can slow down a little bit. So I'll just dive right into today's presentation, and let me know if you can see the slide forward correctly. Maybe if I need to, I'll turn off my video just so that we can see everything clearly. So I was hoping to get a chance to present this very presentation in person. So at this point, I would have said, okay, raise your hand if you're an undergrad student, or you're a grad student, or you're already in the professional working environment. But it's okay. I can see from the registrant list that there's a little bit of mixtures of everyone, which is really fantastic. And thank you to those of you who turn on your camera, so I don't feel completely lonely being on the camera on my own. So thank you for that. I also know that a few of you are already working for the university, for the various universities. And I assume some of you would love to go into the private sectors, and some would love to just stay in the public sector. I understand that as well. And I know there's some engineers in the room, there's some planners in the room, there's some data scientists. And for those of you that are unsure, I won't tell your parents, I promise. What I would love to hear from you is throughout the presentation, if you have any question at all, please send it through the chat group, just so that everybody will kind of know your thought process, and Valentina will help me with facilitate the Q&A after, if that's okay. All right, very quickly about me. I have about 20 years of experience now. I'm a PE, PTOE. I'm just excited to be active in both WTS and ITE member. I'm a mom. I'm also a business owner. For me, one of the things that I love talking to students is somehow they see me as a mentor, but really I'm learning so much from you guys as well, and my clients and my teaming partners. So it is truly my pleasure to talk to you guys today. So for today, one thing that I wanted to really, there's somewhat of a two-part presentation. The first is I'd like to share with you some of the sample projects. And the reason I'm doing this is a lot of the time you will see, you will learn about a particular project, a corridor study, for example, or a master plan of some sort. There's a decent chance you're not going to get to work on that very same type of project all the time. So I thought, I was just sprinkle in, 4 or 5 different types of smaller projects that chances are you're going to get to work on, either from a public sector as employee or a consultant. And then the second part of the conversation, I'll turn over to a couple of reminders for you to think about when you're interviewing for the job, when you selected a company, and most importantly, transition into the workforce. And very quickly, a lot of the very pretty pictures are really stock photos. Unfortunately, I'm not that good of a photographer. I also have a decent selection of photos I took myself through my travels. So you've seen a few of them out here as well. And of course, I stole a bunch from NACTO. And you see it because they do have very distinctive ideas in them. So let me just jump right into some of the sample projects, starting out with traffic impact analyses. So this is something that, a lot of people talked about, traffic impact analyses or TIA. Sometimes you've seen them. So when you think about these, what they are is before a development to get approval to be where they are, whether it's a coffee shop or a big box store, say a Macy's or an IKEA and things like that. They kind of need to get a permit, right? So as a traffic engineer or transportation engineer, what we try to look for is, okay, is the access into the development appropriately laid out? Have folks think about the potential traffic impact? So to do that, we look at traffic generation, how many trips this particular development would generate, and how would they be distributed throughout the network, and what other impacts out there. So for example, if there is a gas station that is close to a office park, for example, there's a decent chance that some of the folks leaving or coming into work would get gas there. So some of the trip would somewhat absorb within the site, think of it that way. And then from all the information, we determine what the total traffic would be. And with that, we identify the impact and then the mitigation. And that could be, okay, you need an exclusive right turn lane onto the site, or you need to eventually at some point signalize the one intersection and things like that. So that's one of the type of traffic study that we oftentimes do as a traffic engineer. Another one you hear about is traffic calming studies. And this could be one of the speed management strategies. And there's multiple ways of us evaluating this. And I'm just showing you a couple pictures of a few of them. Chicane being the very first picture right there. So basically, as you drive, you literally physically have to move, in this case, move to the left slightly just to get through the along the corridor. It forces you to slow down and be aware of the environment around you. Street closure is another really fantastic one. If there's an opportunity to just eliminate certain movement along the street, or curb extension is a really great one, which is the very last picture on the slide there. basically what it is that is provide a shorter crossing distance for pedestrian, and it's to make you as the driver slow down and be aware of those who on foot. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't take too close of notice. And another treatment, which is you've seen quite a bit, which is the speed cushion or speed hump, or in this case, speed table. So when you drive, it literally lifts you up about 6 inches or so away from the base of the roadway. And what it does is that it just helps you be aware that, okay, I might be driving too fast if I'm driving a little bit uncomfortably going through the speed humps, right? And another example of curve extension right at the speed at the crosswalk is the next intersection. And also, when you have the wider turning radius like that, a vehicle can drive really fast through there. But by tightening up that radius, folks can go a little bit slower and be aware of their environment. So one of the things that we typically try to do is we look at the before and after study just to kind of see if the mitigation is effective. And as you can imagine, you cannot put traffic calming devices on all the street all the time, everywhere, right? So typically we have a process, we have a program, and a certain segment of the roadway would have different, I want to say different functional characteristic to it. So we wanted to honor the functional characteristic of the roadway. So for example, something like Glade Road, we're probably never going to have traffic calming devices simply because carry a lot of folks, especially with the interchange 295 and Turnpike, right? But then for a smaller street adjacent to your campus might have traffic calming devices just simply because it should really carry a smaller number of vehicles at a lower speed. So that's what we do. And I'm moving right along to another type of study, which is a parking study. And for this, there's a variety of studies that you might be looking at. So parking demand is a really simple one. So let's say if you have an office building, how many spaces would this particular office building need? And not only that we have to accommodate for general parking, we have to think about the handicap parking, maybe even scooter parking, bicycle parking, things like that. And for handicap parking, for example, you have to think about how one would get out of the car and have a ramp that lead into the entrance of the building, things like that you kind of have to think about when you think about a site plan of the development. And more and more, many of you guys I know don't have cars and not interested in driving. I remember when I was your age, when I was 16, 15, 16, 17, I was like counting the day for me to get a driver license. But many of you are not interested. You are not interested in cars. You have scooters, or you have hoverboard or a skateboard. You just get around campus and you're perfectly happy with that. And you wanted to live in a denser neighborhood where you can walk to Publix and Whole Foods, and you just never have to have a need for a car at all. So there is a reason for justifying reduction in parking spaces. And of course, there's share parking that you need to potentially think about as well. And by that, I meant, let's think about a mixed use development, right? That have, say, offices in the morning and a restaurant or a bar in the afternoon. So yes, in the morning, a whole bunch of folks are going to come to work. And then at the end of the day, if they wanted to stay and grab a beer, that's great. But then they would typically go home, make dinner, and other people would come there and get a drink. So realistically, you don't need that many parking spots for both the morning folks and the afternoon folks, right? When you think about it. And similarly, things like middle school together with a late night, I'm just going to say a nightclub, but it could be a bar, or it could be a night only event, like comedy shows, for example. Let's say if they just happen to be in the same area, obviously the two development can then share the parking spaces or the parking lot, the parking structure. So you don't have to really double up on, the parking supply side. So that would be another type of study that, and then I'll just share with you just a couple more very quickly. Another one is like the safety study. And for this, it could really range a wide range of study. I have been lucky enough to be participating in, the research end of safety mediation study, all the way to literally looking at one crash and see what we can do about that one crash. And fortunately, or unfortunately, sometimes there's not a whole lot we can do. If there's a gentleman that had been getting himself in trouble all the time and drinking all the time and driving really fast and without his seatbelt, I'm not sure if there's a whole lot we can do besides enforcement and education. But what we hope to be able to do is, on the engineering side, what can we possibly design our street? Think about land use, bus stop placement, or mid-block crossing placement, so that we can provide the best and safest environment for our user. So that's what we're trying to do. So typically we look at crash databases, and they big scale. They could be hundreds of thousands of crashes, and you zoom into either a corridor or an intersection, and you look at the crash diagrams and you think about, okay, what really happens here? And a lot of time we have to comb through the report itself, the crash report itself, and hopefully from there you can identify mitigation measures. And as you have heard this term before, Vision Zero, many of the local agencies have adopted Vision Zero policies, and DOT does the same. What we hope is that in the future, there will be zero death when it comes to pedestrian or bicycles or vehicular crashes in general. Like, that's what we're really aiming for. It's definitely a high bar to reach, but as traffic engineers and planners, we want to get there, because everybody who involved in a crash, it's just not only ruin your day, even if you have a bumper to bumper crash, it's just really not a fun things at all, let alone something a little bit more severe or unfortunately resulted in a fatality. It really is something that can impact a lifetime. So that's something that we wanted to avoid at all costs. So many of the agency adopt Vision Zero action plan, and from there they have specific, very detailed action that we can take to help reach the Vision Zero goals. Okay. And I'm moving on to the very last type of sample projects that we do a lot, and it's called design traffic development. And what does it mean is, when you plan for today, it's pretty easy, right? You know what the traffic condition going to be like, who's going to live where, how many people are going to ride the bus, typically how many people are going to walk to school, things like that. But what if you wanted to look at 5 years, a short term, or even 20 years out? What would happen then? So for something like that, we rely on a couple of data points, one of them being historical trend. So we look back at 10, 15, 20 years ago, what happened to traffic? Where do people live? Where do people work? What are the mode choice? And we look at social economic data. So things like, okay, if I'm in the food service industry, let's say if I work at Chick-fil-A, and I love Chick-fil-A, so I'm just gonna have to give a shout out to them. So if I work at Chick-fil-A, chances are I'm gonna live somewhere near a Chick-fil-A. Or if I work at a fast food restaurant or a grocery store, chances are I'm not gonna drive 45 minutes to a grocery store to work at. Chances are I would hope to be able to work somewhere close to my home, right? And for us professional, many of us will take a really long ride to work just to get to our ideal job, right? And of course, as you know, with the pandemic, things have literally turned the other way around. Many of my friends I know have been working from home, and you can see I am in my home office today. Even though I do have a perfectly great office, but I am in my home office. So there's that changing in social economic data as far as population, employment, household, number of vehicle ownership, things like that, to just characteristic and personal preference and company policy, things like that we have to look into. And once we, a lot of the information get put into travel demand modeling for the long term, and a lot of that help us determine what the growth typically are intended or typically will be in the long run. So, so we do a lot of that sort of work. And I know that's a lot to put out there. Maybe I can pause for one moment. If it's okay, I'll ask if Valentina, if anybody has any question for me. So maybe I can just pause before I move on to the next section of the presentation. Is that okay?
Yes, that's okay. If you want, I can read it out loud so that.
Yes,
whenever...
absolutely.
Okay. Since you're saying that sometimes you have to complete the data on your own, is that usually the common case? In general, how good, reliable would you say the crash data is?
Okay, so I will have to say that just like anything, we use the data with a lot of care. And I can say this with confidence is this, the data is being improved all the time. And I only know that because I started out working on a safety project, I want to say maybe 25 years ago or so, with a company. And at that point, I was reviewing one type of crash, and it was median crossover crashes on the turnpike. So of thousands and thousands of crashes occur over like 10, 20 years periods on the turnpike, you would imagine there's quite a few of them. My one particular focus was the median crash over crashes. And unfortunately, at that point, most of the police officers would handwrite out their the crash information, and somebody interpret the handwriting, and I'm not even kidding, interpret the handwriting, type it up onto the computer, make it into an Excel spreadsheet. And then I interpret the Excel spreadsheet. And if I'm lucky, I get to see the original crash reports, right? But now more and more, I hope that you guys never experience this, but the last time somebody just swiped me in the parking lot, the police officer who reported, who was out to help me reporting the crash, digitized the exact location where the crash happened, entering in all the information. And in fact, as he was entering it in, he was even suggested the correct address for me, because as it entered it in, it's just like, oh, you said this, do you mean that? And I know you guys saw this, every time you send in, like, put together a package or something, it's just like, hey, you said E period, did you mean east? Or did you say 40th? Did you mean 40th? So it does that sort of thing for you. So the crash, I wanted to say in general, the crash have improved a great deal. Having said that, I should also say that there's always room for improvement, because, as you and me, if I just say, oh, it's probably about 3 blocks away from so-and-so. Wait, is that 3 small blocks or 3 big blocks? Or half a mile? I'm like, really? Half a mile from now, the intersection is not what you said it is. So, you kind of have to be a little bit careful about what you read. And, obviously there's just depending on the scope of the work, right? Sometimes it's almost doesn't matter. I hate to say, but let's say if you have one intersection and another, and the crash occurs somewhere in between, and if there isn't really anything special or particular about the exact location, that's one thing. But if there's a crash that occur, and they talked about a person that just get off a BCT or Palm Tram bus, for example, you kind of wanted to know where that bus stop is. And if there's an opportunity for you to potentially move that bus stop closer to the intersection, so the person doesn't have to cross mid-block, So it really, really, really depends on the nature of the crash. So to answer your question, I'm sorry that it's a long answer, but the crash database has improved over the years for sure, but it's definitely have more room to improve. But just like anything at all, you as engineering planners, you don't take information for what it is. You really have to make sure that it is truly what it is, and you do the analysis based on the most updated and most available information to you. Yeah, I hope that helped. And I know it's really easy for all of you guys to just unmute yourself and answer question too. I really don't mind that at all. Is there any other question, Valentina?
Yes. How did you overcome the lack of data during COVID era for your planning studies?
Well, I am still in the middle of lack of data. So there's a couple of things that we do. And I start out with data collection. So first off, we looked at, so just this week, actually, I'm helping a city of North Lauderdale with a project. And they said, hey, you know, could you go out there and look at some turning movement volume for me? And I said, I'll be happy to. We sent somebody out. And they said, hey, do you know what is that number compared to a regular year, right? So I said, I don't know either. So what I did is that we zoom out from the study area a little bit, and we found that just about a mile or so from where we are studying, there is a crash, where there's a count location that is counted by DOT every single year for the last 10 years. So we said, okay, great. Now that we have that point for 10 years worth of data, I also asked our count consultant to count at that very location as well. So that give me almost a comparison benchmark, you know, so that's really helped me. There's a chance that we're going to have to factor up or down the volume just so that we can get a quote unquote normal data. To step away from it a little bit, what we have found is every 10 years or so, there's a little bit of a turbulence in data. So 10, 15 years ago, there was this thing called the recession. I don't know if you guys remember. You might be too young for that. But so there was that. And with that, there was also a little bit of a wrinkle in our projections and our data. And yes, some of them is a little bit odd. So let's say if you look at a count, or if you look at crashes, or if you look at what we consider to be normal data, sometimes we would exclude, you know, personally, I probably would exclude 2000 and 2020 and 2021 volume and data for my analysis, just to get somewhat of a normalized condition. Yes, I hope that helps.
Is Signal 4 Analytics an acceptable crash data platform to Florida Department of Transportation now? I know it wasn't officially in the past.
Yes, so I believe, and I noticed that was Kenzit. Hi, Kenzit. Thank you for the question. I do believe that it is an acceptable platform. And I know Signal 4 is moving from one interface to the next. And we've been in touch with them quite a bit, actually, just to have a couple questions for them, because the new interface is not as friendly as the old interface. But, you know, for what we are trying to do for the Department of Transportation, for example, what we try to do, typically we grab the number of crashes, we see the trend over the years. Once in a while, there is something that caught our interest, and we dig a little bit deeper into the crash report itself to look at. But yes, that's definitely something that is a very, very good start. And of course, there's other databases that you kind of have to look at. And an example would be, you know, within the railroad right-of-way. My goodness, I'm going to get the agency wrong, so please forgive me if I get this wrong. But the railway agency, they typically would have kind of their own database when there's a crash occur within their right-of-way. So, you know, sometimes Signal 4 is a start, but if there's something a little bit more particular to the corridor, then we contact other agency as well. And of course, you know, some of the transit agency also keep really good database on crashes involve buses or shutters and things like that. So Signal 4 Analytics is definitely a good start. Any other question before I move on? And by all means, as I move on from the sample projects and I talk to the students, most of the students, about a little bit more about the transitioning to from academic to professional life, I'll be happy to just come back as well. And this is the hard part. I'm not sure how much you are interested in like the next couple topics. I'm going to glance through them rather quickly, but I'll be happy to elaborate on them. Okay. So If you don't have a resume already, definitely put a resume together. A couple hints and tips, definitely do not stress the truth. And by this, I mean, you know, we all wanted to put our best foot forward, right? But guys, we know people, we know your professor. Don't say anything that untrue. It's also a characteristic of your own, because if you say something that was like, that's not quite right. And I know I'm looking at the names on the attendance, and I know I review a couple of your guys' resume as well. And I tried to be really honest. I'm like, hey, when you said this, it's actually meant this. Is that what you meant? And the student will come back to me and say, oh, no, that's not what I did. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't think so either, because I don't think that can be done. So make sure you revise it to say this, you know, so just be careful. And having said that, just have your friends, your professor, your mentor, me, a bunch of ITE or WTS folks, they will be happy to help you with reviewing your resume. Make sure you include a non-school resume, a non-school email address. And the reason I suggest that is this. A lot of the time, your resume will sit in somebody's database for a while, and then 6 months, 9 months later, they look for you. And if you're not really good at checking your school email, you might miss out on an opportunity. So make sure you do that. Make sure you have a LinkedIn profile. Keep professional, please. And talking about social media, keep all of your social media professional, because you do not want somebody to judge you based on that one outfit that you wear at one Halloween, at which you might or might have a few too many drinks, okay? And I say that because that has been done, and I would hate for you guys to be judged on something like that. So just be careful of what you put out in the internet, okay? And then a lot of time I see references available upon request. Don't do that unless it's absolutely true, because if you say that, I say, hey, you know, give me 3 names, and then this is the time when you say, oh my goodness, Dr. Kreiser is overseas, how am I going to call him to ask for a reference? And no, just make sure you ask who you wanted to serve at your reference, and make sure they okay with you listing them before you put that on your resume. Okay, very quickly. When you interview, you have to know this. You have to sell yourself. Be humble about it, but you know, sell yourself. If you get a chance to meet them in person, make eye contact, have a really practice your very firm handshakes. And if you need to practice with a friend, it's really convey confidence. Make sure that you do research on the company, on the person you're meeting with, ask a lot of questions, be there. I think this by far is the most important thing, because just as I am today, I'm taking out time out of my day to put a presentation together. I'm talking to you guys. That's why I truly appreciate those that have the camera on, right? Because I don't know if you right now cooking and doing laundry, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've done that before. I'm listening to webinar while I'm doing laundry. I'm completely guilty of that. I walk my dog while I'm listening to a webinar. But you know, you get what you give. That's the reality. So especially when at an interview, be attentive. Don't think about, oh wait, there's that assignment I forgot to do. No, you're at the interview. You're only going to be here for an hour. Just be good about it. Be attentive, because the interview is here to meet with you. Okay. And I value written thank you note so much. So please do so if you can. And I know it's a little bit creepy to ask for somebody's address, but with a little bit of research on the internet, I'm sure you find out where they work and what office they're from. And if you have to, call the number and say, I wanted to confirm that this person works here because I'd like to send him or her a quick thank you note. I'm sure somebody who answered the call would help you with that. Okay. And I know many of you are doing your online interview right now. So make sure you dress well. We can see you. We really can. If you have a shirt, take a little time, make sure that you iron your shirt. And the next little tidbit is for the female. Don't wear something too loud, only because sometimes over Zoom or any cameras, you know, sometimes the loudness is incredibly distractive. So just be careful. Arrive a little bit early, not super early, because you do know that majority of the time when somebody joined a conference call, the person who set up the conference call will get notification. So if an hour or 2 hours before, or I've seen people that log in at midnight and then all of a sudden I get a ding on my phone, say somebody's attending the conference, that's not great. So realistically, you wanted to make sure you test out the conference platform So, and the easiest way to do that is have your friends or family say, hey, let me just send you an invitation. Let me just test it out with you. Is the lights doing okay? You just really test it out and just make sure you arrive 5 to 10 minutes early. Not, I don't recommend more than that, okay? Turn off all of your notification, check the lighting, equipment, the background, just to make sure that you don't have, craziness like, skeleton of dinosaur in the background, like what I'm doing right now. And a lot of the times folks don't, with gender fluency, it's difficult for someone to know, to how to be addressed, right? So if you say, how would you like me to address you? Is it Mr. or Miss or Ms. or Mrs. or like, if you don't know, just ask. And I think a lot of folks would welcome that. So just be very careful. And again, if you don't know, ask and say, oh, this is my first time doing this. Can you help me with this? And they will be happy to help you. Okay. My next one is going to be really quickly. Oh, sorry. My next one is going to be really quickly. When you evaluate a company or an agency, think about the learning or advancement opportunities. Okay, so don't think about the project right now. What do you do? What would you do after the project is over? Because you will get a project when you will get a position when they hire you just for that one project alone. And 6 months from now, 9 months from now, when the project is over, do you have the job anymore? And if that's what you wanted to do, 9-month project, then that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But just really, really think about it. And also know what kind of project you're going to be working on. And I'll be honest, a lot of you probably come out thinking, I'm going to do a lot of analyses, but a lot of it's going to have to come down to communication, whether it's meeting with client, composing emails, setting up meetings, attending meetings, writing summaries, meeting notes, things like that. So there's a lot of that communication. So just really know what you're getting yourself into. And if you're the type that just really want to work with Tableau or MATLABs or a bunch of other statistical analyses type software, then know that's okay. Just know what you're getting yourself into, okay? If at all possible, meet with your supervisor, your managers, the one that you're going to be reporting to and the one that you're going to work with, because you're going to spend a lot of time at work, you guys. So you kind of have to like the people you work with, so that's really, really important. Two other things I wanted to quickly talk to you about is understand the benefit package. So for right now, many of you probably still have insurance under your parents, which is great. It's fantastic, right? But soon when you start working, you will need, you need to know how you're going to get to the doctors, how you're going to get your teeth cleaned, if there's gym membership as a part of that package, is there long-term, short-term disability insurance, is there life insurance, how many days off do you have, is there retirement contribution, things like that you wanted to think about. And then last but not least, ask a lot of questions about what expected of you, what you're going to be doing, how you're going to be evaluated, because all of that's going to be really important. Okay, I'll pause real quick. Does anybody have any question? Okay. Either you have a lot of questions or you don't want to ask, and that's okay. If you wanted to shoot me an email after, that's okay too. Or if you wanted to send me a private message, I'll be happy to connect with you after too. Okay.
I have a quick question, sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, something like we have this opportunity to, let's say, meet the right person, right? Let's say we are not in the mood to meet that person right now because, many personal things, whatever. Would you say that how important is like that first impression? Because sometimes some of us may avoid like, okay, I'm not gonna meet that person today because, I'm not with the energy, let's say. Well, what are your...
That is such a good question. So are you thinking about, let's say somebody set up a call interview or just a meet and greet and you're just not feeling up for it? Is that what you're thinking about? Or
Yeah, like, I don't know, let's say like a conference and, you are just drowned out of energy, like, and then you
I
have the
remember
chance.
those conferences. Yes, somehow you think as you at a conference, it's just a breeze. But oh my goodness, I remember those conferences when, like the whole day, you have to jam pack a whole bunch of information into you, and as I understand it's hard. So two things I'll say. First of all, know that as a part of the conference, networking is the key, right? You're there not only to take in all information from the speaker, but also to meet and greet people. So take a shot of coffee if you have to. Jump back to your room fresh enough for like 10-15 minutes before the networking session if you can, if at all possible. And if there are days that you just really cannot do it, and if there's somebody that you really wanted to get to meet or really wanted to get to know, come to the person and say, I love to meet with you. I am just overcommitted today. Would it be okay if we have coffee tomorrow morning? Or would you have a moment after your presentation tomorrow afternoon for me to follow up with a couple questions? So what you're saying there is, I want to be the best self to be able to meet with you. Would you have time for me? And if the person says, sorry, I'm flying out immediately after my meeting, then say, oh, it's really unfortunate. Would it be okay if I follow up with you with an email? Maybe we can meet on Zoom later, right? So it is really at your own risk. So my question is, I guess my answer is in twofold. One, do the best you can. Like I know a lot of time by 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I'm like, I'm exhausted, man. This is brutal because, a lot of time I start up my morning early and, do all the things. So yes, I'll just do a shot of Cuban coffee. That's kind of my go-to. And if you like Red Bull, go for it. Mountain Dew, whatever it is, do a little bit of that just to shake up a little, get a little bit of energy, and maybe just target who you're going to meet instead of going to a happy hours that you have to meet 4,000 people that chances are you're not going to be connecting with. Pick a few, right? So target a few. Say, okay, that person is right there talking to somebody. Let me just like kind of stand by, stand close, and introduce myself really quick and have a quick conversation with them, and maybe meet 2 other people. And then, if you have to go back to your room or go back to school or go back home to refresh for the next day, then do that. Or just ask for an opportunity to meet with them one-on-one. That's a really good question. Yeah, you have to be honest, right? Absolutely. So I put together just a couple reminders, as you transition into the workforce. The first thing I say is to be humble. And I know many of you are, and I know I personally learned this the hard way, only because I kind of thought I knew what I know. And one thing I realized is the more I know, the less I actually know. As I'm 20 years in the industry, and as I get to know something really, really, really well, and then as I get really, really, really good at what I do, I realize, oh man, if I'm so good at this, and if I know everything there is to know almost about this one topic, there's so many other topics that I know very little about, so just be humble, have empathy and perspective. I think this is really, really important. And you notice that I didn't put, hey, have straight A in school and have 4 internship by the time you graduate. Yes, all of that is definitely important, but just having empathy. So let's say if your client was late meeting you, instead of say, I can't believe you're late meeting me, say, hey, I hope everything's okay. Let me know if I can reschedule the meeting, because you don't know what he or she is going through, right? And just that other people don't know what you're going through. I'll share with you a story. We were working with this one particular student, and she's absolutely terrific. But yet the person that I pair her up with to help her as a mentor and mentee pair get back to me and said, hey, what's up with your girl? She never got back to me. And she just flicked out on me all of a sudden. She never responded to any of my phone call, any of my texts. I don't know what's going on with her. So I said, oh, I'm really embarrassed. I'm so sorry. That's never like her. So let me just check in. And when I checked in, it turns out she was going through a really tough time with her personal family, with her family back home. And nobody knew about this. So had she come to us and said, hey, I'm going through some stuff. I just need your understanding for a couple weeks. And, it's one of those things that if you don't call friends back and then 2 weeks later, you feel really embarrassed that you never call her back. And then you just like, oh man, now it's 3.5 weeks. And oh God, now 2 months. It just kind of spun out of control. But if you would have just said, hey, sorry, I totally flicked out on you. I had in my calendar, I just whatever it is, I apologize, let me make it up to you and reconnect. That's okay. That people would understand, right? So along the same line, you have to continue to network and learn, because you will find out that the industry that we're in is the people industry. We're not just doing traffic engineering. We're not just doing urban planning. We're not just analyze data. You get good data when you know the right people to ask for the data. If you come up with a theories, and if you prove or disprove your theory, it would be really great for somebody to help you realize your theory is right or wrong. So just continue to learn, continue to network, okay? And one other thing that I'll say is take responsibility when you're wrong. Correct it and learn from it. And we're all gonna make mistakes. And I am guessing I make more mistakes than most of you on the call. And I can completely admit to that. And the reason I know that is so many times I just could not believe I forgot something, or I misspelled something, or I said something I shouldn't have. And I would just get upset at myself for it. And the only thing that I know how to fix it is just come clean. Say, guys, I didn't have all the information, or even I put something together, I put a report together and I didn't have all the information. I didn't think about one piece of data that I should have really considered. Just it's okay. Just take responsibility, and more importantly, don't repeat the same mistake. You know, and I just have a few other slides I wanted to share with you really quickly. One more slide actually, and then that's it. So, as you graduate from either your undergrad or your grad school, you know what to do. Like that's pretty easy. I hate to say, right? You know what you're supposed to do already, but I would ask of you to think above the scope. Like, let's say if somebody asks you to go and collect parking inventory, think about why they asking this and what does that mean? And wait, if you go out now and you collect the data, why do you collect it in the morning only and not at night? And why is it during the day only and not during the weekday only and not in the weekend? You know, to think above the task and ask a lot of those questions, that's really helpful. And one thing is know when to ask for help. Don't think that you Superman or Superwoman, you can do all of this yourself. You probably could, but you probably couldn't do it well without help. So it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, I know I learned it from school, or I know you said this at the last meeting, but I wrote it out and I didn't really understand it. Please help me. Whether it's your supervisor, your boss, your manager, or a colleague, or even some friends of yours that you still stay in touch with, by the way, you should. So just really ask for help. It definitely show that you human, you humble, you're still learning, and that's okay. I think this next point I already talked about a little bit. As an engineer, you don't just produce report and do technical work. You also, it's a business at the end of the day. It really is a business. So learn how to sell. And by that, just you need to learn how to sell yourself, your time, your company's time, your expertise, and things like that. And then last but not least, understand your client motivation and goals. Because a lot of time, if you just look at the one thing that they ask you to do without understanding the big picture, you will not be able to serve them quite as well. So just keep that in mind. And I know it's a little bit vague, and I know it's a lot of information all at once to throw at you, but I want to make sure that I leave you with my email address as well as my phone number. When you do email me or when you do call me and I don't pick up, please leave me a message. Tell me where you meet me, just so that I can remember, and I'll be happy to help and stay in touch in any way that I can. So that's all I have. I want to make sure that I leave a little bit of time toward the end of the hour for any question that you guys might have. Anything at all? I'm recognizing some really familiar names, so thank you for joining us, guys.
I have another question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the introduction, you were talking about, your mom, business owner, professional, you are also involved with the ITE, anything, WTS. How do you manage, like, to keep balance? Because, at the end of the day, yeah, you have to get home, you have to see your kid, things like that.
Yep. And I also have a dog who just a little bit insane, I'll say it. So I don't know if he's barking while I was talking, and I do apologize if he did. I will share with you this. A former colleague of mine said, you juggle, right? You juggle. And the kind of the goal is to keep all of the ball in the air. I'm not a good juggler, by the way. I'm not at all. But when you think about it, there's balls that are crystal, and there's some that rubbers, and there's some that concrete, right? And the crystal balls would be a project that have a firm deadline, a proposal that have a 5 p.m. Eastern time deadline. Like, you cannot drop those. You just simply cannot, right? And then there's other things that are a little bit more flexible. And that could be anything from a project that have an internal deadline today, but if you absolutely have to, you can work over the weekend maybe, and to get that done. And if you ask these girls on the call what time I sent them the presentation last night, they will tell you how late I worked last night. But so to me, I prioritize and I reprioritize. And you will see this again and again. And so for me, for a longest time, I couldn't make it to every single one of my daughter's piano recital, but I make sure that I go to her final recital for the year, right? So right now, my daughter plays soccer, and I have not missed any soccer game at all because I schedule my life around it. So yes, I wake up a little bit earlier, I run to the gym real quick, or not. And then I come home, I walk the dog, I, knock out a couple of things, I get a couple of work done, and I'm lucky enough to have clients that allow me to leave a little bit early, pick up my daughter, brought her home, and then while she does her homework or whatever, I log back into work. And so come back to the juggling analogies. I will say that there are certain, let's say certain projects or certain items on your list that going to be like rubber ball, right? It bounces right back up. You get a chance to grab it again. And if you never grab it, it's going to freeze out. So there might be things on your to-do list, and you will be the best person to know which one that is. That kind of doesn't matter anyways, and that could be something like take a survey for something that will give you $5 gift card to Target. Okay, it's great. Who doesn't love Target and who doesn't love gift cards, right? But when you don't get to it, you just don't get to it, because what else is more important, right? So let's say if somebody having a birthday party, great, you absolutely would love to go. But if you miss it, they're probably going to be your birthday next year. I hate to say. But let's say if your grandparents are having their 50th anniversary, that is kind of a big one. You want to make time for that one, So there's that balance that you kind of have to pick and choose. So I don't get everything done, definitely, but I feel pretty comfortable with what I get done. How's that? So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
Thuha, it looks like we have one more question. So what are your tips for gaining first transportation internship during undergrad? I'm an older student. My background is human resources, but I'm a junior in civil engineering. I just started joining the American Society of Civil Engineers this new school year. How would I deal with that white space on my resume since my background is not relevant?
So I'm going to correct first one thing that you said. Thank you for the question. The space, the white space in your resume is not relevant. Okay, I'll say that. Unless you've been sitting around and doing this the whole entire how many years, and I'm pretty sure that you didn't. you probably took the time off to either take care of the family members, have a child, take care of a spouse, or just refocus your energy and passion. And if human resources was not something you absolutely thrilled about, congratulations. Congratulations for not staying in what you're not thrilled about. So that white space in your resume is not relevant. It's build character. It helps you determine where you wanted to go next, right? So what I would say is having joined an organization like ASCE is fantastic. Another one that you want to look into is WTS. If you're female, and you don't have to be a female to join WTS, but ITE is another fantastic organization. And what I would recommend is put a resume together and network. So try to go to as many meetings that you can, just to kind of see who out there, what's out there, determine what it is that you wanted to do. And I would be more than happy to introduce you to an organization, a company that you might want to explore an internship. And you're right, having an internship going to really help give some legitimacy to your resume, perhaps, right? It's typically is the case, but it's difficult to get that first job, to get that first internship, to get that first professional job. So put your resume together, update your LinkedIn, do really well in school. I know it's not easy because I know if you are an older student, you might not have all the brain power that young kids have these days. So so keep at it, and I think joining organization, meeting new people is really important. And most importantly, though, knowing that your experience, what you bring to the table, is that many more years above any other student coming into the profession. And if you already have that HR, human resource experience, is incredibly valuable. So do not dismiss that. I would highlight that in your resume, actually. And if you have a follow-up question, please contact me. I'll be happy to chat with you too.